Hey, it's Mr. Westra here. Just to remind you of where we've been here for Half Brother. So last time we read, Jennifer and Ben had a conversation about their kiss that they shared, in which Ben's not really sure what's going on, but it certainly sounds like they are in the friend zone. Also, Richard introduced the learning chair. It's a chair that's introduced to help Zan learn sign language quicker, and Peter is not sure if he is okay with that or not. So here we go. This is Half Brother number 16. Before I went to bed, I got out the dictionary. Dad had said Zan wasn't human. There was no arguing with that. But not even a person? I was pretty sure that couldn't be right, and was disappointed when I read the definition. An individual human being. So you had to be human to be a person. It didn't seem fair. I tried to think of what made someone a person, the unique things, and it seemed like Zan had all of them. He had a distinct personality. He had favorite toys and games and food and drink. He liked to play. Sometimes he liked to learn. He had friends. He had a family. He loved me and Mum and Peter. And he could talk to us, or was starting to anyway. Day by day he could name more of the things around him and tell us what he wanted and even what he was thinking about, like the birds in the backyard. Listen, weren't these the same kinds of things that made me a person? How was I any different? Maybe I was smarter and I could talk better, but I bet Zan was smarter about some things. He had better eyesight and smell, and one day he'd be stronger than me. Put me in a jungle and I'd seem like a total idiot. Being a person just couldn't be about how strong or smart you were. But the dictionary said you had to be human to be a person. Maybe the dictionary was wrong. Tuesday after school, Peter and I were doing our 4 to 8 shift together in the backyard. Dad had compromised about the new schedule. 4 evenings a week, we had Zan on our own, and the other 3 students were with him and would give him his dinner and put him to bed. On Sunday, no students came at all. Dad wasn't happy about it, but Mum had insisted. This time, she'd won. It was May, and the days were pretty warm now. Zan liked to play in the sandbox for a bit before we gave him his dinner. Peter was still fuming about the learning chair. Why not just run some high voltage through it and call it an electric chair, he said. Yeah, I'd learn pretty well, bolted to a chair like that. You won't quit, will you? I've been worrying about it consistently for the past couple of days. He sighed and filled another bucket of sand for Zan, signing bucket. I don't want to, he said to me. But that chair, man. So far, it hadn't been a success. But Dad and even Mum had warned us it would be rocky at first. Zan hated being strapped in. He'd hated it on Monday, and he'd hated it earlier today. Apparently, he hooted and then shrieked. He struggled. He wouldn't sign. Peter said, I wonder if the whole project's screwed up. He looked at me carefully. We're pals, right? You wouldn't rat on me to your dad. I shook my head. Yeah, I trust you. You're a good kid. I've just been reading a bunch of stuff on animal testing lately. It's pretty awful. I mean, I used to think the space chimps were really cool. You'd heard of them, right? I nodded. Ham and Enos. NASA blasted them up in rockets before humans. The chimpanauts, said Peter. They were on the cover of Life magazine, I said. But you know how they got those chimps, he asked. I shook my head. Well, said Peter, African hunters would track down mothers who had new babies. The chimps would be up in the trees, and the hunters would shoot them down. The mothers would clutch their babies until they fell. As they fell. Most of them died together when they hit the ground. But apparently some of the mothers tried to fall backwards so their bodies would shield the babies from the impact. I didn't say anything. It was too horrible. Any babies that survived, Peter went on, the hunters tied up to a pole by their hands and feet. They'd walk them through the jungles to sell to European traders. Then they'd crate them up and ship them to the United States. I read that only 1 in 10 babies survived the voyage, and those got to be guinea pigs for the astronauts. He told me about one test where they put the chimp to sleep, glued an oxygen mask over his face, and crammed him into a capsule filled with water. Then they blasted him along the ground in a rocket sled just to see how the body would react. That chimp never woke up, and Peter said there were lots of other tests they put chimps through before Alan Shepard first went up. Peter shook his head. Everyone says, oh, but isn't it better the chimps died than the humans? And I know we're all supposed to agree, but it's not like the chimps had a choice. Ham and Enos didn't have a way to say yes or no. Zan does. And maybe when he says no, we should listen. Otherwise, it's kind of slavery. Slavery? The word seems so extreme. You don't think we treat Zan well? Sure, we mostly treat him well, but he's here for a reason, and it's not because your parents wanted a chimp. I know that, I said, but apart from the learning chair, it's pretty good for him. Better than a zoo anyway, said Peter. Still, he doesn't really have any kind of freedom, not like you would in the wild. In the wild, he could get eaten or starve to death, I pointed out. I'd heard that one from Dad, and it seemed like a pretty good argument. I didn't know why I was suddenly using Dad's lines, thinking from his point of view. I guess we were still a family, and I wanted it to be a happy one. It made me nervous when someone outside criticized it. Look, Peter said, I don't know if you're interested, but there's this guy coming to give a talk at the university next week. I guess you'd call him an animal rights activist. He thinks we shouldn't be using animals in any kind of experiments. Even like ours, I said. Maybe. I don't know. That's why I'm going to hear him. You want to come? Dad wouldn't like it, I said. No, your dad thinks this guy is a lunatic. I'll go then, I said. You want to come over after school? Jennifer asked me on Thursday. Lunch was almost over and we were standing in the quad with David and Shannon and Hugh and Kelly Brown, who hadn't been far from Hugh since the last dance. I guess they were technically going out now. Sure, I said, trying to sound all casual. Jennifer had never invited me to her house before, and I felt a rush of excitement. Who's coming? Not me, said Hugh. I've got rugby practice. Yes, we all know you have rugby practice, Jennifer said, rolling her eyes. Hugh had just been promoted to the grade 9A team, and he'd been working it into conversation quite a bit. You sticking around? Hugh asked Kelly. Her mouth turned down at the corners. To watch you practice? It's kind of muddy out there. Nice team spirit, said Jennifer. Kelly gave her a sour smile. I've got piano, said Shannon. Oh, right, said Jennifer, like it had slipped her mind. And Jane's got a doctor's appointment, right? Mono, I thought hopefully. Oh well, Jennifer said, with a careless shrug. She looked from Hugh to me, then brushed my hand. Looks like it's just the two of us then. The Godwins lived really close to the school, and I walked home with David and Jennifer. The last 2 periods had passed like a blur. It was like the teachers were speaking in a variety of different languages, only some of which existed on Earth. I had no idea what we covered. All I could think of was, Jennifer has invited me over to her house. She knew Hugh couldn't come. She knew Jane couldn't come. I was pretty sure she knew Shannon couldn't come either, because Shannon always had piano lessons after school on Thursday. So she was really inviting just me. Her father would not be home yet. Her mother was out playing golf until 6. Yes, David would be there, but he said he had tons of homework, so maybe he'd disappear to his room to work. We walked down the shady streets, talking about the glam rock scene in the UK and Evel Knievel trying to jump his car across Snake River Canyon. Hasn't he already broken every bone in his body? Jennifer said. Except his neck, I said. Actually, I think he broke his neck once, said David. This time he's got a jet engine to help him make the jump. The guy's nuts, I said. But if Jennifer had been waiting on the other side of Snake River Canyon, I would have done it. David led us into the house. I called Mum and told her I was over at the Godwins and would catch the bus home later. We hung around the kitchen a bit, getting drinks and toasting Pop-Tarts. Then we went down to the rec room. David clicked on the TV and we all slumped in a row in the Chesterfield. We caught the tail end of Happy Days and then the Flintstones came on. David sighed and stood up. As much as I'd like to watch cartoons with you kids, he said, I've got an essay on fascism to write. Then he trudged upstairs. We were alone, sitting side by side on the sofa. I tried to think up lines from my logbook, but couldn't. You want me to change the channel? Jennifer asked. Absolutely not, I said. The dominant male took charge. I loved the Flintstones. Really? Me too. I had a crush on Betty when I was younger, I admitted. She looked at me, lips parted in surprise. You're kidding. No, she's a fox. I like her cave dress too. Have you noticed she never changed it? She never changes it? Same one every episode. Jennifer wrinkled her nose. I'd never thought of that. Come on, I said. Be honest. You probably had a thing for Barney. She gasped in outrage. I never had a thing for Barney. Okay, he is a bit short. How about Fred then? She was laughing pretty hard. You're such a weirdo. Did you have a thing for Wilma too? Nope. Nope, just Betty. I like brunettes. She was still laughing when I kissed her, but then her mouth relaxed into mine and we turned towards each other on the Chesterfield. Fred Flintstone was shouting, Yabba Dabba Doo! At first, she tasted like cherry Pop-Tart, but as we kept kissing, I stopped noticing. I felt like some desert wanderer who'd finally reached a well. My hands grazed her cheeks, her hair. She had both hands around my neck. When my tongue touched hers, I wanted more. I wanted everything about her. She pulled back and, for the first time, I felt I could really look at her, without having to worry about being rude or her friends noticing. The freckles across her nose made her more beautiful. Her mouth looked swollen and delicious. Your lip gloss is definitely smushed, I said. She shrugged. Oh well. We talked for a bit, and then we heard David coming downstairs, already tired of fascism and wanting to watch I Dream of Jeannie.